What's up, everybody? Happy Friday. We are Team Tim and going at it loud and strong. How is everybody on this 4th of July week? Like, crazy week when the 4th of July is in the middle of the week. Like, hey, did you take the beginning of the week off and have a long weekend on that end? Obviously, you're not taking this day off because you're here with us, right? So, like, hey, Tim, what part of the week did you take off when the 4th falls in the middle?
You know, it's interesting because I just started working with a Canadian firm, and they had the Monday off. They actually had it's July 1st, but they recognized it on July 3rd. So Canada Day, Canada Day.
Yeah, Canada A.
Canada Day.
Nice.
I don't know, Matt. You're up in upstate New York. You deal with any, Canadian entities and firms and stuff like that. So,
nothing here. Yeah.
Nothing. No.
Jesse, how's your chickens?
Chickens are good. Enjoyed the long weekend. I got a cattle chute installed, a really old one, actually. The farmer behind me gave it to me, and his dad actually welded it and built it about 60 years ago. It was sitting in the back of his barn. So doing a little rehab, and I'm sure I'll have some pictures for you for that.
You're gonna put the hose on it and make it a water slide for the kids, or like
I did coax my daughter to stick her head through the head catch and then trapped her in there and acted like I was leaving, like the good dad that I am.
The good dad that you are. That's right. Exactly. Now she's gonna be like traumatized and she's gonna be like, do you remember that time, Dad? Like when I was like 3 years old and you stuffed me in the cattle thing, and then you get the cattle. The story's just gonna get bigger and bigger as they get older. I know, because I have 2 daughters of how that works, right? So, thanks everybody. Thanks for coming in. This is the inaugural. I can't even say the word. Inaugural. There we go. The first ever sort of reformatted, re-envisioned, re-brought up Team Tim Live. And so, we hope to bring these to you every week at the same bat time, 2 o'clock, not like the image said 3, 2 o'clock Eastern time. Here on Friday afternoons, kind of give you a little something to kind of listen to as you hopefully start to wind down some of those tickets for the weekend, kind of get going. Yeah, inaugural, there we go. So see a bunch of Facebook comments coming in. If you wanted to join the live comments, hop over to LinkedIn because we can see a little bit better on who might be commenting. But yeah, glad to have everybody here. Thanks so much. And it says Facebook user, so I bet if you did the LinkedIn comments, we'd actually be able to see who you were. So anyways, I'm Team Tim. I'm Tim of Team Tim, here with my co-partner. This will get more professional as we grow. I promise. Sort of, not really. Tim, founder of Compliance Risk, also MSP Vital Tech Services, and with our co-host here, or the hostess with the mostest, Tim Schnurr from Camello. Tim, say hello.
Oh, thank you, Tim. Thank you. So Tim and I met about a year and a half ago in the ConnectWise Pitch It competition. Matt, so interesting way there. But it's been a great partnership talking about proactive cyber, right? Hardening everything left of boom. If people recognize the right of boom, left of boom vernacular. So we've really focused on the channel, really talking about some of the easy things that MSPs can do, MSSPs, IT providers. So excited to continue this journey with Tim here, and what a great guest, our first week here at launch. So happy to have you on, Matt.
Hey, Matt Lee. Oh my goodness, we are blessed with Matt number 2.
Hey, Matt.
Team Matt.
Yeah, Team Matt.
Right, Team Matt and Team Tim.
What happened to Jesse? Oh, there he is. Oh,
I'm
he's back.
He's getting the dog.
My camera shut off. Continue the technical
First episode, right? You're allowed to have stuff like that happen.
We are, like, faux bars. They're going to happen. Stuff's going to happen, right? So, yeah. Hey, Tim, you've introduced you. I've introduced me. Might as well introduce. I came up with a name, and you're going to probably hate this, but it's Uncle Jesse.
Oh
right?
my goodness.
No, like you have every right to like give me shit, but I was thinking like I love the Dukes of Hazards, right? Just the good old boards.
I'll accept it, and that's been a refrain throughout the years. So I kind of grown and actually secretly like it. So that's just fine.
Okay. So
yeah, Jesse,
Uncle Jesse.
Yeah, there you go. I like it.
Perfect.
Yeah. Jesse Miller, founder of Power PSA Consulting. I help MSPs build, repair, and scale their cyber programs for profitability.
Nice. Thanks. And the one, the only, the legend, the founder of /r/MSP on Reddit. Okay, docs, we got to get into this whole story. Matt, take a couple seconds, introduce yourself, say hello, come on up on screen here and chat for a little bit.
All right, so I'm Matt Topper, other Matt who's here today. Matt Lee's in the audience. I work for ConnectWise, and I go out into the world and talk about cybersecurity and do that from the perspective of someone who spent a long time working in the cyber industry. So was at an MSP for about 12 years, had a stop at Gradient MSP in between, doing AppSec and internal IT for them. And now I'm here at ConnectWise, just sharing my industry knowledge and trying to make us all better. It's really been an interesting journey so far, right? It's that technician to manager path in the beginning, and then technician to vendor, and then vendor to someone who goes up on stage and talks. Definitely a unique path and perspective. And as Tim mentioned, I was the original person to hit the create button when RMSP came out. It's not mine. Don't own it. The community owns it, but I did hit the button.
Awesome. And you got some fans here, right? So Mr. Matt Lee, obviously. Hey, Matt, how are you? Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about community here for a second. But before we do that, I want to pull this up on screen because, Jesse, I want you to read our core values. And
all right,
not like being put on the spot.
I got it. Well, TeamTim is a dynamic and innovative live streaming company founded by two passionate individuals named Tim. With a strong focus on governance, cybersecurity, compliance, education, TeamTim provides weekly live streams to create awareness, discuss challenges, and provide practical insights on cybersecurity practices. By featuring prominent guests from the technology space, TeamTim aims to foster knowledge sharing and help organizations operationalize cyber practices while advocating for a shift left mentality in the industry.
Thank you so much, my friend. Thank you so much. So yes, that whole, and I know I put you on the spot. You weren't even ready for that, were you? But you did a great job. So yes.
Oh, thank you.
The whole goal behind this, we're going to get into MSP and Reddit here in a second. But the whole goal about why we're doing this is, Tim and I realized, we would get on these little oh my gosh, here's a hot topic. We'd fire up a live stream and just banter about it. People come in and then we decided maybe we should kind of formalize this a little bit, put it together, right? Our goal, or at least my heart, is let's help educate the MSPs. Let's bring on some really great humans like Matt Topper here and kind of just put some stuff out there to get MSPs thinking a little bit more on left of boom, on shift left, right? And so, Jesse, as you said, we're here to help educate you, help grow you. We're not here to pitch or sell. In fact, I was talking to one of our upcoming guests here in a couple of weeks, and I flat out told them, no pitching, no selling, or I'll mute you and boot you. So yeah, it's we're pretty excited to kind of get this kicked off here. And so, 20 years from now, we're going to look back and we're going to be like, oh my gosh, do you remember that time when Jesse's camera and I didn't have my stuff and my shirt kept falling down? And oh my goodness. So Matt, talk to me a little bit about, you and Ray and Ashley, I think, kind of did this thing on Sunday, all about MSP / I'm even blowing it up. So tell me a little bit about it.
So the Sunday event, so that was, we thought it would be a good idea to gather the community leaders. And I wouldn't say any of us are necessarily the keepers of the community, but I'm from RMSP. Ashley's prominent in MSP Geek, and Ray obviously is from MSP Media Network. And so we feel that the channel community is one large community, and all of us have distinct pieces of it that we either are heavily involved in or brought to the table or had some hand in creating. And it was a way to show that, one, we're all friends outside of just the communities, but two, really a united and unified front to talk about issues within the channel. And none of us are talking about our vendor positions or sales or products or anything like that, but things that are noteworthy to us as an entire community, as an entire business sphere. So things that are noteworthy, right? We're big security people. We like talking about I at least like talking about governance. I like to say I'm one of those weird security guys that loves GRC. So thank you for having me on for that aspect. And that event is just a way, it's a very informal thing. It's just a way for us to hang out and grow and foster the community as a whole, not any of our individual. And I see, Tim, you pulled up your newest creation. Think this would be a good formal announcement of it, the MSP compliance subreddit. So tell us
Yeah.
about that. I'm going to interview you.
You're going to interview me. No, so, the more we started to I've been on Reddit for, I don't know, longer than I'd like to admit, probably not as long as you all, but I never really did anything with it. And it's only really been the last year or two that I've started to kind of do a little bit more with it. And that's because of /r/MSP, right? It's because of that MSP community. And, we talk a lot about how this community is just so vastly different, right? Not so different in other sort of genres, right? So I've been involved in the beer community here in New England for a long time until I couldn't drink anymore, and built a very, was part of some of that founding online communities around beer. So the Facebook group here in New England for beer, I think is close to 10,000 members now. And I was there when it was just 6 of us talking about local breweries and then building that out. So community has always been near and dear to my heart. But I never thought about it on Reddit until about 2 years ago, being part of the community and now kind of being on the vendor side, seeing that and understanding that. But now, as you said, compliance, governance, what do I do with HIPPO? All this fun stuff keeps coming up and coming up and coming up. And so I try to answer those questions, but they kind of get buried and they kind of get lost. And then the same question will pop up over and over again. And I just was you know what? MSP compliance is here. That's what I've been breathing. I'm not trying not to promote myself or any of that. This is sort of a little smaller subreddit specifically focusing on compliance. That's it. So done plug. All right.
So that's a good point, though. You brought up something that always causes governance to take a backseat, and that is let's face the reality that, as important as it is, and it doesn't apply to the 4 of us on this call, I'm guessing, but governance is not cool the way that hacking into stuff and that aspect of security is. How are you finding that? Are you having to educate, or are you able to get more from some of the regulations that people are subject to, some of the insurance questionnaires? Is it less of a fight now to get that adopted? And then I'll let you go back to hosting your own webinar.
we had a LinkedIn post, Jesse and I, so I know his camera just dropped off. If you're still there, Jesse, that's a good softball for you. We were talking about, you hear the word governance, you just kind of cringe a little, and it's either boring or just root canal, like I was saying, right? You're wow,
Yeah, just if you have that link handy, go ahead and drop it in the chat, in the message chat here, so people can go to it. And I'm not logged into my LinkedIn, so I can't pull it up. But if somebody wanted to share that thread, happy to have that pulled up. So, but talk a little bit about that, Jess.
Yeah, I think governance is one of the. So to answer your question, Matt, why don't people talk about governance? It's because it's a very arduous and arduous might not be the right word, but it's a very methodical discipline. So, we go back to the days before there was all these great tools with AI and automatic evidence collection and everything. It was really an exercise in spreadsheet management, meticulous spreadsheet management. And so, and sometimes it still is, and that's not glamorous, but what it is effective. And I compare it to things like patching. documenting process, all these things that we do inside our MSPs to help them run well. That's what governance is for security. And so I think it's something that once an MSP realizes that there is a litany of additional opportunities buried within governance, you're really going to unlock some doors for profit and revenue when you do that. Because if you're doing governance right and you're meeting with your clients and you're pushing security initiatives forward and you're talking through things and you're doing things like business process ideation as part of governance to discover where data is, things like that. There's all sorts of associated and ancillary projects, IT projects, your standard MSP projects that you're going to uncover doing that. And so it can really become a revenue driver if you're doing it properly and kind of swallowing the frog, so to speak, and being organized with it. So,
awesome. Yeah, I think that nails it. It's the difference between a security program and just a whole bunch of tools.
Right. That's it.
That's it. That's the nugget. We're done here. We're going to take that clip and call it
we don't allow. Yeah, that's the word program, right? So Tim and I are vendors, obviously. Like, we're looking at MSPs all day long, and you see a lot of tools, right? When you typically look at a cybersecurity offering of call it the run-of-the-mill MSP, and not some kind of program or destination or target or goal, right? Like, where are they trying to reach in terms of security posture? Where do they want to be a year down the road, two years down the road? So I think you nailed it there, Matt, in terms of program nuts.
Yeah, good stuff. And so I'm not even going to get into that because I can talk the word governance for at least 4 or 5 hours straight. So I'm just going to kind of leave it at those little bit of nuggets and kind of bring us back here, right? So Matt, in your world, right, you've had to deal with some of this governance stuff, some of this compliance stuff, right? I was just listening to earlier, Matt and Kat Lee on their live session just an hour ago talking about how you were part of that in Matt Lee's early beginnings, especially around the compliance stuff, right? Do you want to talk a little bit about that, or?
Yeah, happy to. So Matt and I did a lot of things, and lots of other people. We just are the ones that ended up talking about it publicly most often. We did quite a bit in really trying to envision an overall security program. And that's why that came so easily and quickly to me, is that we've been doing this for quite a few years. And we made a distinct choice to get ourselves out of this, just throw every tool that every vendor tries to sell us at the problem and really try and get something into it. And I'm sure, much to Matt's annoyance, I was often the guy saying, slow down, I have to write a policy for this before we are able to implement some of this stuff where there's no procedure around it yet. Or, hey, I see this change didn't go through the change control process. Let's go back and reconcile that. But to everyone's credit, we got it right. The need for it was clear, and the benefits were clear too. And so that was us. We treated ourselves as an organization, a real organization with security governance internally and for clients. And I think it was to our own organization's benefit. We got it. And I would say we were more governance oriented than many of our clients were, and we didn't have to be. It was one of the things that I think made us unique about it. We didn't have a regulation that said we had to. We weren't necessarily going for a particular audit that we had to go through. We did successfully navigate SOC 2, but that wasn't the driver of it. The driver was overall security program, and I think the desire to see it through that lens is just what made us able to say, we're truly a security focused organization. We're not simply a collection of tools, a collection of vendors, or anything like that. And, we're out there having conversations about risk appetite as an MSP. It's not something that happens all the time, but it's something that made us unique and pretty awesome, I say.
So if you could boil it down to, a couple of key points, right? Because listen, I run my MSP that's a very similar way. Like, everything you're saying, music to my ears. Change management, change control, people, process, policy, like all that great stuff. Yeah, and so like Matt agrees, right? Preach it, right? We did the risk reduction and blast radius reduction. I love the word blast radius too. Like goes back to my old Army days, right? So, if we could boil this down to a couple of good, like, key takeaways for an MSP that's emerging, that's growing, that's recognizing this word governance kind of actually means something, and I should probably do something and start somewhere, right? If you could boil that down to maybe 1 or 2 bullet points, and we're also going to have Jesse chime in on that too. So
Tim,
maybe
to add that, to add to that as well, like, you know, Matt Lee, Matt Topper, obviously, Tim Golden, all, you know, compliance leaders, I'll call it that, right? In the absence of that, in the absence of a CISSP or some security credential, put that on as well, Matt. Like, how do you, you know, you guys are a cut above. So how do you, in the absence of someone like you on MSP's team, how do you get there in terms of governance or things like that? So that makes
Great
sense.
question. No, it does. So, you know, take your typical 10 to 20 person MSP just starting out and who might be in the tool collection mindset right now. How do you get started in that? And one of the big things is it is not something you do all at once. You can't wake up one day and now you're doing governance. Even if you download a collection of policies from somewhere and replace the company name at the top, you're still not doing governance. You're just downloading some policies.
Thank you for that.
So,
thank you for that.
Right? Yeah. It's just not possible. It's a mindset shift. And so the things that I would say are to start having structure. It doesn't have to be formal at the beginning. It doesn't have to even be written down or start writing it down, but start thinking about why you're doing what you're doing and have a repeatable procedure. And don't even think of it as governance at the beginning. Think of it as the bus factor. If I get hit by a bus tomorrow, is someone going to be able to understand why we made these decisions and based on the same information come out the same way? So perfect example might be whatever criteria you have for evaluating third-party vendors or products, right? Write that down and continue doing that as you go through normal operations. And it doesn't have to be complex, right? It could be something as simple as a 2-paragraph thing that says they have to have a SOC 2 and they have to have MFA, and that's it. And that's the start of your third-party vendor policy. If you do that, then start doing that for everything you do. Start writing down your processes and your procedures so that they really reflect how you operate, that they're real and not just our insurance company said we had to have this and now we did it. That doesn't mean anything. That doesn't do anything. So that's my advice, is to start with formalizing and getting your program and your documents around it to reflect how you actually work, and then tweak it to decide how to get to where you want to be. And then also think about where you want to be as part of that.
Yeah, you know, and I'll even take that a little bit step further and actually a little more narrow focus, right? You know, you always hear me say, start somewhere, start something, do something, right? If I was to go into building any business, doesn't matter if it's an MSP or whatever, I would most likely want to start to develop a business plan. I would have an idea in my head. I would probably Google some business plan template that relates to the thing that I want to build. And then I would start to build out my business plan. It's the same kind of concepts, right? It's the same kind of stuff. You're just applying this to a different aspect of your business. I don't know if there's a bunch of MSPs listening right now. If you could give me a yes or a no in the chat, how many of you have a documented onboarding process? We'll just wait for a second. Right? How many of you have a documented offboarding process? Or at least the start of it. It might even be scribbled down on a notepad someplace. It doesn't have to be formally in a thing, right? That's what we're saying. Take those things that you're already used to doing in your business and apply them to cybersecurity. Apply them to CIS controls, apply them to some framework, some business plan, something, and just start to write some things down. Start to formalize. Yeah, so Timothy Olette. Yeah, so there's one. He's got both an onboarding and an offboarding. Good for you, my friend. That's awesome. And you should keep doing that and keep iterating. The last comment that I'm going to make about what you said, Matt, and then I'm going to turn it over to Jesse, is everything that you said talked around iteration, talked around living, breathing iteration, right? Just because I write an onboarding policy today doesn't mean that it shouldn't change tomorrow, right? And Timothy Olette there with your onboarding and offboarding, awesome. You should be iterating that. And we're going to continue to press that. It's a process. It is never a one and done. So I'll leave it at that. Jesse, thoughts, comments?
Yeah, thoughts. I think, Matt touched on this, and I think you did as well, but using like a lean or an agile style approach to getting quick iterations out there and then feedback loops. So you get something in place and you iterate on it. That's going to be the quickest way to get something in place. And you'll be surprised how quick it comes together. And then the other thing is something that's helped me in my career as someone who started as a really deep technical engineer type role and has, transitioned kind of to the other side of the business. There's the analysis paralysis. You want to get everything perfect and you don't know what you don't know. So you don't feel like you can do anything. So I think evaluating things in a vacuum. So step away from what everyone thinks or what you should do and ask yourself, what do I think about this? What's right? And then hold that up against what the current established status quo is. And if they line up, great. If they don't, be curious about why they don't. You might just discover that you figured something new out, and that's when you're really onto something.
Yeah, awesome.
That's such a good point. You ever write a policy for something, then realize you're 75 steps away from being able to actually follow this, and that doesn't do you much good either. Maybe as a future version, but document what you're actually doing today.
Yeah, I love that.
And I was just going to say on top of that.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Jesse.
Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah. No, so we had multiple calls as well, talking either vendor products or MSPs and rolling out new things, right? Innovative. We can call it innovation, right? Because we're moving them forward, even though it's rather boring, if we want to call it that. But how do we, they said turn the dial slowly, right? I think we heard that in multiple shows on product rollout, just so you can kind of get an idea of like how frictionless it's going to be. Like, is it going to be hopefully not crippling to people logging in or accessing data, or I think one was on whitelisting or something like that, and that could be really annoying. So like that was an interesting topic, and it fits pretty well in that iteration narrative that you talked about, Jesse, about like go slow, try it on a sample set of people, maybe, right? A/B testing, they call it, just so you don't wrangle the clients and the users too much. But yeah. Go ahead,
I think the term governance and compliance scares people off or gives them pause, but really you just have to ask yourself, what's the right thing to do? And then, start doing it. and you might find out that that's wrong, but you're not going to find out until you do it. So again, when you're getting started, and we're going back to actionable practices, think about all the things that could secure your clients, write those down. Like you said, iterate on those. And then, use a standard like CIS, IG1. Back when we got started with our security program, there was no IG levels. There was just CIS. And so what we did is just sat down and looked at all the controls and said, yeah, our clients are never going to do that. They're never going to pay for that. They're never going to do this. And we came up with, pared those down and said, and I sat down and said, hey, what are they actually going to do? Or what should they do? What's feasible? What's like a stretch goal, so to speak, for our clients? So we came up with that stretch goal list from the CIS controls and used that as our risk assessment. And that had great results because we were doing things that were actionable and realistic for our clients. It's like smart goal setting for your clients. Think about it that way.
Yeah. And a pivot we'll take a little pivot here. As an MSP, you're an IT provider, your business, and Tim just talked about business plans. So how do you make money doing this, right? Like typically, most MSPs charge per endpoint, per seat, per month. right? Like, how do you conceptualize what it's going to cost you in terms of labor and effort? The tools are obviously there to implement or support the control work or the governance, as we're talking about here. I think this is a question probably for Tim and Matt, right? You know, you guys as rather mature MSPs, like how do you guys conceptualize that? How do you go to market with a built-in margin, feeling you can really do this without like falling on your face and make, you know, and having a loss there?
So I can go. There has to be an understanding between you and the client that you as the MSP are not directly responsible for the client's compliance, that they are responsible for their own compliance and you are helping them with it. And if you have a client that is not willing to embrace that mindset, you really need to ask yourself if you want them as a client. It's going to be an antagonistic relationship. There's going to be this, you know, the typical example of the client gets the questionnaire that they just forward to you, or the auditor gets pointed in your direction when they show up, and that's not good for anyone. The other point I'll make is when you get into you know, more of the security than the compliance section is I have an issue with saying sell security as a separate domain, right? It's just built in. So when you're talking to prospects and talking to clients about what you're selling, you're not going and leading with RMM anymore. You're not going, you know, you're not talking about your PSA or any of that stuff. You're talking about providing a service. So, you know, if you were at Secure, Raja and I talked about what you're really selling is trust. And if you are talking to your clients and they are trusting you, this is what it costs, period. And you don't get into the individual line items of you need a license for the compliance management system, you need a license for whatever you're using for governance, hopefully not spreadsheets. You have this service and price it as such. And so that might mean raising your prices, and that might mean a different clientele. And so I would challenge anyone watching to think that if you have a customer or a client that doesn't want to do compliance at all and you're fighting with them, what are you doing with them? Is this someone you want to hang on to?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would even take it a little bit of a step further, right? And so those of you that know Alex Farling from Like Cycle and Kyle Christensen, they did a really great webinar the other day talking about the right customer fit, the MSP, right? And so, you know, when we get prospects as an MSP, we're interviewing them probably more so than they're interviewing us. We want to know if they're going to be the right client for us, right? Because, oh, everybody, like, they'll just bring me up. Like, no, you might not be the right fit for us as an MSP. You know, and there's criteria, like, you know, asking those hard questions when you're doing these prospecting calls with, you know, are they the right fit for me as the MSP? Do they fit into what it is that I'm trying to build here, my business plan in my MSP, right? Head over to either Alex Farling or Kyle Christensen, or even with Wes Spencer. The video is on their YouTube, on their LinkedIn profile. Some really great questions for you as an MSP to think about finding that right client fit. Now, that's one area. The other area is, great, now you have all these clients and things like FTC safeguards, right? The HIPAA law.
Great comment there from David, right? So as you just said, Tim, like, I've already got these clients for 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
I don't want to make
Yeah. So yes, David, that's exactly what I was just getting into, right? So the first part of the conversation is prospects and vetting them appropriately. But now you have current clients, right? And you need to ask yourself, do I want that $1 a month and putting us at risk if they're not willing to do the things that we're saying are going to protect their business, right? It all goes back to, is it a good client fit? Well, yeah, I mean, I need, chasing pennies to make dollar. Like, I don't know, David, like, I get it. It is complex to try to pivot from this is what we did, and now we're facing these challenges. It's the risk conversation with your clients. And if they're not willing to fix their risks, I don't know if I'd be willing as an MSP to take it on.
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
right. And I think we're past, or we're in a different stage where it used to be where it was a cardinal sin to turn business down as an MSP, right? So we've all lived in those days, but I think we're in the spot now where you have to turn business down, and you have to say, hey, this is our ICP, this is our ideal client profile. It's financial services companies under 100 users with CCO in-house, right? Because we know that they're small, but they have enterprise needs. We know that they're serious about compliance because they have a named compliance officer, and we know that it's going to be a great relationship for the most part working there. And then when you get in there, then talking to them, does the risk conversation make sense? Do they understand risk? Are they open to it? Are they involved in it? All those things play into it. And you get into, even other marketing terms like psychographics and things like that about the organization.
Wait, what? What? That's something we'll have to dig into in a whole nother session.
That's a whole nother session for sure. So, but point being is that you really want to narrow your focus, and being an ops guy, that actually feeds into profitability. So how do we make money with this? Well, that is one way, is we have the right client and we're able to modularly repeat processes and have efficient economies of scale by having very similar clients that we work with all the same way and don't have to pivot like that comment just said.
Yeah.
So let's
go ahead, Matt.
Just to address David's point, you as an MSP need to decide what your non-negotiables are, right? So at this point, if someone flat out refuses to do MFA, drop them. There may be other aspects of security and compliance that aren't necessarily a non-negotiable, and only you can decide where that line is, or what portions of this you absolutely need to have and what portions of this you're going to try and convince. And obviously, we're talking about clients that don't have any kind of forced regulatory requirements, just your general client. And
right.
It's a hard question because it's not something that any of us here can answer for your organization. What we can do is tell you that it takes some self-reflection in determining how much of that risk and liability you're willing to take on as the MSP. And the answer is different for everyone based on, one, the types of clients you have, two, the percentage of revenue that those clients represent, and three, how far along you are. If you are early in a stage and you lose a big client, well, that can put you out of business. If you've been around for 15, 20 years and you lose a medium-sized client, that's annoying, but not business threatening. And so it's different for everyone.
Right. And you do make a couple of good points, and I'm going to keep hammering and bring back David's point here, which is, we've had these clients forever. What you're saying is conceptually great, but in practice, how does that work? Right. So we had to go back to some of our clients. So we had either a 1 or 2 or 3 year contract, doesn't matter, with some of those clients. And as we're prepping for those client renewals, we're having that conversation ahead of the renewal with, this is the direction we're going in. These are the things that we're seeing. We want to be able to help you provide, good quality services to yourself. And that means it's going to go up in price, but you're going to get better services and eventually be more secure, because these are the things that we're bringing. As you said, Matt, it's a hard conversation to even conceptually think about when I've got 20 clients all paying me whatever, and I lose 10 of them because they don't want to do it, or they're going to go someplace else.
I think I think education is a big part of it as well, Tim, right? So the world changed, IT changed, risk changed since 2020, right? Like, you saw a typical insurance policy go from $800, that's now 25 grand or something like that. Clearly indicative that the risk of the services that I'm providing for the client have changed dramatically. So it's going to be more expensive to protect you and remediate, or manage those risks. So I think that's the narrative you got to kind of pound on with the client. Talk about, like, what happened in 2020, and people started working from home, and ransomware turned into a vertically established, efficient industry to basically strike the weak, right? So yeah, it's just a constant conversation. You see it on LinkedIn, right? I mean, we see a lot of posts, but they're really directed to their clients as well, just trying to convey that, you know, the world is changing and it may be more expensive to work with me, right? So how do you set expectations? How do you set how do you, I don't know, you know, basically shape their thoughts, or you're thinking what they actually do need in IT. So
yeah, I mean, it's a twofold problem, right? So those that are vendors in the space, right? And I could probably venture to say all four of us here are vendors in some form or fashion, right? Helping MSPs be able to roll this out in a manner that is obtainable, affordable, and retains their clients, right? Tim, you made the question, how do they make money? Well, how do they keep the money that they have while adding on the services that they know they should be doing? And I think it all boils down to why we're doing TeamTims on Friday, right? It's because that education. How can we educate those MSPs that in then turn can educate their clients? In fact, we should probably even do a session purely for the client of an MSP. So I'm going to throw this out there, David, for those that are listening. MSPs, if you have a client that is willing to come on here and talk about this kind of stuff, we'd love to have it, right? We'd love to get in that dialogue to understand not just the objections, but how to actually maybe transform your client's business themselves.
So yeah. It's a really tough nut to crack, especially when you have an embedded customer base that for all intents and purposes really likes you. So you're going to go upset the apple cart there. And I love the comment about, you know, do I do this new security thing or do I make payroll? I mean, it's something you got to grapple with. That's something you got to grapple with. But I think there's two things there. And from somebody who did this with an MSP successfully, there's two things to think about. Your existing the best time to plant a tree was 30 years ago. The second best time is today. Okay. So first things first, get risk assessments to all your existing clients, show them their risk, hold it up to their face, and don't let them hide from it. That's one. That starts the education piece with Tim, and get the customers that are willing to come along, get them going on the new services. And then the second piece is your customers today are indicative of your marketing and sales efforts from 6 to 12 months ago. So change your marketing focus and change your sales focus as soon as possible to start going after and acquiring and filling the funnel with those ideal clients, right? And so that slowly, as the new clients come in and maybe you churn a couple that aren't willing to come along, you kind of roll that over slowly over the process of a year or two. And, 6 months to 18 months from now, you're looking a lot better than you were, at this current moment. So that's just a pragmatic way to approach it, I think.
Awesome. Good points there.
Yeah. And remember that one of the risk treatment options is risk acceptance. If you as an MSP decide you need to accept this risk, then so be it, but do it by consciously saying, yes, we need to do this in order to make payroll. We're going to accept the risk and liability that comes with keeping these clients on. That's fine.
Right.
All we're saying is don't do the ignore option, right? Make that a conscious decision.
Yeah, and Adam, let me scroll back to that column. Adam Walter just put this up here, about risk transference, right? And so, this is a lot of stuff that we're building out, right? Being able to transfer that risk, have that shared responsibility. If our client doesn't want to do this stuff, great. I mean, don't do it, but you're going to accept that risk. We're not, right? And so that's, Adam, it's a really great point, right? Being able to say, look, cyber liability, QFA everywhere. Yes, I know it's kind of muddied waters, but if we're going to go to our clients and our existing client base and be like, hey, we need 2FA everywhere, and they come back with, yeah, but the CEO doesn't need that. In fact, the CEO should be the first person it needs to be on, right? So being able to, number one, help them acknowledge that the risk is there by doing a risk assessment, right, Jesse? Doesn't matter if you do this thing in Excel, if you use Humanize IT or Lifecycle or Managed Service Platform. It doesn't matter if you use a QBR tool. Use Excel. Doesn't matter.
Here's a simple way to do it. Go to your insurance carrier. I know you all have cyber insurance for your business, and ask them for their latest application form, and create an easy checklist out of that, and go and run it through with your clients. That's a simple way to do something tomorrow.
Exactly. And so do a risk assessment, and then have the conversation with your client, right? Like, hey, I need 20 minutes on your calendar. That's it, just 20 minutes. I want to run you through some things, cyber liability. The world's caving in. We don't want to scare you to death, but we want to just tell you what we know about your network, about your infrastructure, and start the conversation.
On top of that, you're by going through those risk assessments, you're continuing to discover the customer, get to know them, get to gain that trust, believe it or not, right? So as your core business, maybe it's setting up networks or whatever you're doing, right, that you think only here to provide a good network for this client, right? Like, there's so many different technologies. I won't go down that rabbit hole of automation and AI and things like that, but just getting to know them, standing up software for them, there's endless opportunities to make their business better. So one of my managing directors that was a boss of mine at my old job at Big Four consulting firm said, our greatest assets are knowing the customer's problems, right? So if you don't know their problems, like, you can't fix them, right? And there are incredible opportunities, obviously, if you're a Big Four consulting firm, to know the client's problems. So having those conversations, a risk assessment is identifying problems, identifying gaps. So you're going to continue to be able to sell other services, projects, whatever it may be. It may not fit that all-in kind of like per seat model, but that's okay. Don't think that everything has to be run through that business vehicle, right? Like, you'll find a way if the client's going to be willing to pay you considerably to get their headaches, right? To bring opportunities to make bring digital technologies to their business. So the more you know their problems, the better.
Yeah, exactly. Adam, solve their business problems, right? As Adam said here.
And
so go ahead, Matt.
Just one point on the risk assessments. When you're doing this type of risk assessment, one of the key things that to keep in mind is it has to be a real. I'm not saying like go through the NIST risk assessment. What I mean is it needs to be a real risk assessment and not a sales pitch masquerading as a risk assessment. Clients can tell the difference.
Absolutely, good point. And I think that goes back to what Jesse was saying, right? Like, reach out to your cyber liability company. You better have your own insurance, number one. Reach out to them. If not, maybe reach out to our friends at Fifth Wall Solutions. Reach out to me. Reach out to Tim. Reach out to Jesse. Any one of us can help you. Like, start with your own cyber liability insurance company. Get their assessment. Get their current thing, as Jesse mentioned, and build, a quick little form, right?
Yeah, and I think that's.
Ooh, did we lose you, Jesse? I know you've been fading it out a little bit. Yeah,
his audio is good.
We lost.
Going there. Yeah, and Tim, I mean, that
they're gonna know when you're pitching to them. So
yeah. Jesse, we caught about half of what you said. So I'm making the assumption that you were agreeing with. They're gonna smell a sales pitch a mile away versus an actual risk.
Yeah, some great comments coming.
Absolutely.
Here from Adam and
absolutely.
Yeah.
Hey, Matt Solomon. Hey, thanks so much for showing up. Yes, all the Matts, right?
Welcome to the Matt party.
I think at IT Nation, we should put all the Matts on one side of the stage and all the Kyles on the other side of the stage, and then let them battle it out. Not another rap battle, but yeah. So yeah, David. Yeah. So I get, David, you're not arguing with the concepts. Implementing is actually hard. I get it. I know. And David, you and we talk a lot about this offline and other areas. I get it. It's hard, right? Yeah, I understand it. And I don't want to diminish, like, conceptually, all these things are great. actually putting them into implementation and getting them up and off the ground, just reach out to Jesse at Power PSA. Like, he'll help you, right? He'll get you there, right? That's literally what he does, is help you get there, right? So I'm not plugging myself, I'm plugging another vendor. So there you go. Reach out to Jesse. I'm sure he can help you.
It is great. He has the will, right? We've all talked to David, I think, on this, or maybe not on that, but you know, he's got the will. He wants to innovate. He wants to bring these new concepts to his business, to his customers. So that's all you can really ask for, right? You know, plant the tree today. If you missed it 30 years ago, right, Jesse? Yeah.
Yep, that's it. And I don't want to diminish, because again, as somebody who started 10 or 12 years ago, or whatever it was, not knowing a thing about security in an IT MSP and learning it's difficult and it's a lot of work. So, you know, I don't want to diminish the fact that it takes time, and you're already probably up to your eyeballs in work. So, you know, some pragmatic things again to do. You could take your next round of SBRs and dedicate those to security, and just tell the client that. Say, hey, we want to talk security with you. And that way you're not outlaying any additional bandwidth, but you're able to fit that in and talk it with your client. That could be one pragmatic way to apply it. So
exactly. Good stuff. Good stuff. So Matt, last parting words. We're coming up on the top of the hour, cognizant of everybody's time, realizing I need an air conditioner in this room as the sweat pours down my forehead. Last parting words.
Last parting words. I would say, based on the comments we're seeing, focus on educating and do and accomplish what you can. You know, we're all talking about this from a position of having MSPs that have gone through this journey and come out the other side, and what things looked like when I left my organization and what you guys are doing today. That is not what my program looked like on day one, right? Everything was not fully baked out and fully flushed out, and we had clients who were fighting it, and there is a destination and hope for people on this path. It's not it's not going to be day one. And I think sometimes we need to remember that, we, the vendor side, need to remember that there's not a switch to flip and now everyone has implemented all the concepts we're talking about. It's an education, both for the clients and for MSPs learning to traverse this with clients. So that would be my parting words of advice, is to remember to start small and get the wins where you can.
Yeah. Awesome. Good stuff. What about you, Jesse?
Yeah, I think piggybacking off of what Matt said, that's some real wisdom there. Celebrate wins, and also look to partner early. You know, take that risk assessment that we talked about and list out everything that you can't currently do, partner where it makes sense, and then start layering off those services as you build internal teams and grab those margins as you bring those things in-house. I think that's another way to help jumpstart the program. Awesome.
And then Tim?
Yes, I mean, overarching thing, like CIS controls, right? Mapping your tools, although it's not perfect, it is a start. You start to see some of your gaps. A lot of CIS controls don't involve heavy use of tools at the tool at all, right? So a lot of it are things you need to do or sit down with the client and engage in. I was checking out Matt Hopper's feed here, and it's actually great. He's got a lot of stories that really map back to CIS controls, right? Or current events, or things that were USBs or data access, right? You can kind of go down to CIS controls. You can see a lot of his content he puts out. He's a great follow, right? To understand, why the control is relevant. What are some of the current events, or what are some of the stories that are happening out, in the real world on why you need to do these things. So I think, Jesse nailed it. Just keep moving forward, and hopefully you'll get there someday. But some great resources in Matt. So check out Matt's feed. I'm sure he's got some other resources at ConnectWise as well. So I'm eager to dig in.
Yeah. So coming up on the last couple of minutes, I know there's been a lot of questions, a lot of conversation, a lot of discussion on risk and risk management, right? So coming up next week, our friend Alex Farling, we're going to go through how your old risk assessment doesn't cut it anymore, right? You can follow us on LinkedIn. You know who Alex is. We're going to get into all this fun stuff of risk assessments, right? So I didn't prep anybody in this call ahead of time to kind of prime the pump, but it certainly worked out that we talked a lot this week about doing risk assessments, about shifting left and getting that client engagement. So join us next Friday at 2:00, where we're going to bring Alex on and we're going to talk about risk assessments. We're going to do some of this work. We may even have a handout that you can take a risk assessment with you at the end. I don't know. Still working on that. Don't hold me to it. I think I should probably say, do the follow, comment, share, right? So we want to be able to stream this on our own actual LinkedIn page, not just mine or not just Tim's. In order to do that, you need to have 150 followers. I know, LinkedIn, right? But so we'd love you to head on over to TeamTim, put in the little search bar, click on it in the comments, and just give us a little follow, right? That way we can separate this out of me and out of Tim and out of Jesse and actually make it its real own thing, right? That was part of why we're launching this. So it's, even though it's 2 Tims, I mean, we can get 2 other Tims down the road, or 1 Tim down the road, or 4 Uncle Jessies down the road. Being able to live on just besides me and Tim Schnurr. So give us the give us the follow, all that fun stuff. I would be remiss if I didn't say it. Anybody else have any last words, any parting words, anything they want to share before we kind of do an outro?
RMSP, right? I always thought that was anonymous, like it was Satoshi Nakamoto, but apparently Matt kicked it off a long time. So
you're right.
An incredible resource for the community.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. So do we end this with my video background bumper thing? I don't know. What the hell do we do here? Maybe we just do this, right? So maybe we just end on this note, right? So hold on. Kind of the way we started off, right? No, that's awful.
Just cut it.
Yeah,
hit that end stream button.
Very good. Hey, everybody.
Have a great weekend.
Have a great weekend.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks. Matt, hang out for one more second. We'll get in green room. So hold on. Thanks, everybody. And peace.